Good morning, good evening, good night. Welcome to season 5. Season 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 of our gatherings together here on this First Light that's now called First Light. I don't know when we started that. Anyways, we started it when we started it. But now 125 of these babies somewhere in the recesses of the internet. That interesting developing wisdom cache. Anyways, I want to say hi and welcome to another episode of this. I was not really sure. I didn't get a chance to promote it yesterday. We were involved in something else yesterday, but yeah. So I'm glad I'm seeing people that are on already, and that's great. And thank you for putting in the comment section, Liz. You got the pole position today of saying hi in the comment section, and so I want to say good morning to you as well as everyone else who's joining us. Good morning, Ariel. Yes, it's still morning there in the Ontario, and so unless you're out here in BC for some reason, but anyways, good morning, Ariel. Good morning, Lena, and good morning, Linda as well. Great having you with us. I'm getting messages here, and so yeah, I just wondered. Oh, and Brenda as well. Look at that. I'm not even sure if I'm saying all the names yet. So I want to say welcome. Yes, I am sporting the good old Vancouver Canucks. Maybe this is the year. Maybe this is the year. I even thought maybe I'll just I know I'm not doing the mug of the day anymore, but I did pull out the Vancouver mug. I thought, I gotta do that. So I'm not really sure which mug I'm gonna have. I'm sure I've done Vancouver a long time ago. I'm at 125 episodes, so somewhere close to that in the amount of these mugs. But anyways, that is the second sip of the day. I have to admit, I took a sip right before we started because it was one of the few mornings where I actually had a moment. I almost feel like I'm running into this thing and starting it just like right in the last second of this. But yes, today I was able to kind of breathe for a moment and just kind of go over the stuff I want to talk about today because we're starting a whole new series on John, and I'll get into it in a little bit why we're doing that. And but anyways, I want to welcome you for being good morning, Badil. Look at that crack of you're up early this morning, and so that's good news. It's we say it in faith here, Ariel. I know you're already assume the sun rose in Ontario, but it hasn't quite risen here in beautiful BC. But anyways, I'm glad that you're with us, and we're going to be deep diving into a whole new thing. And as I noted in the little info bracket thing there, it's almost 900 verses, and it's almost twice as long. Yes, Ariel, and the sun's up. I'm glad. I assume the sun is up there in Ontario, but I'm just saying that we're tackling this beast compared to Romans, only in the sense that Romans really had so much to do with some doctrine and belief. So I want to be able to accomplish, my goal is to accomplish John in about the same amount of time, but it means I have to crack out a bunch of verses basically every week. So we're gonna deep dive into it now. It's 6:31. We're gonna jump into this thing, and then we will. Yeah, it's going to be an exciting journey. I love the Book of John. I think it is fantastic. I think that anybody who hasn't, who just wants to get back into Scripture, don't start in Genesis. Start in John. That's my opinion on it. But anyways, that's just my opinion. Anyways, let's pray. So God, I want to thank you for your word, that in the beginning was the Word, and the Word was with God, and the Word was God. And so I'm thankful for your word, and I just pray that it would speak to us. Jesus, may your life and your ministry inspire us to follow you more closely and to listen to your voice, because you are the Word. So God, I ask that you be with us as we go through this journey. In your name, Jesus, amen. All right. Great. Good morning, Jerry. Good having you this morning, Jerry. You are. Congratulations on getting up. We had you were up late on Monday or on Tuesday night with a board meeting, and I know you had an outreach meeting last night. So let's all give a shout out to Jerry for getting up. Sorry, joining us so early in the morning with all of the things that are going to, with all the other responsibilities he has. Anyways, so we're going to be dealing with John. And so rather than just jump right into John 1:1, I want this to kind of be the intro. And yes, we are going to look at scripture if I can get on it. But I want us to get a better understanding of why John was written. Linda, thank you for your support. I'm glad. I'm glad you feel that way. So, who was the gospel or the historical account? But that's the gospel is the meaning this good story, gospel, this proclamation, according to John. So, who is it written from? John. We believe. Okay, so I want to jump right out of the gate and just say that nowhere in the book of John does it say it's from John. It's actually anonymous. But, okay, let's be clear. There's a lot of things that point to why we still, and I'll use that phrase, still believe that John was the writer. Okay, so first off, externally, just from other accounts, you have the early church fathers who unanimously said it came from John. They believed that right away. So that's something that is important for us to note. But internally, when you're looking at the book of John, as we're going to walk through this book, there's a number of things that happen that help us get this understanding as to where we believe that John wrote it. First off, whoever the author was a Jew. There's no question. Good morning, Chris. Just see that you're here now. That he was a Jew. He also understood Jewish customs. He also understood the Jewish longing for the Messiah. So it had to be somebody that was in that era where they were still in oppression and they were waiting for that Messiah to come. Good morning, Ellen. Having you with us this morning as well. It's a great crew that we have today. He also knew the different beliefs between Jews and the Samaritans. So he had to be pretty aware based on interaction and relationship in that day. He also had to be it's believed that he would have to be a Jew from Palestine as well, because he has these specific details. Oh, good morning, Judy Kearns McKibben. Mom. Good job. Good morning, Mom. Great having you with us. Shout out to the reason why I'm here. But he had details written in there, like details about the 5 colonnades, these surroundings, distances between locations. You would only know that if there was this understanding of like actual knowledge of it. Also, he was an eyewitness to what happened. He phrases like, we beheld his glory. So it had to be somebody that was really closely connected. Also, his writing style matches the other letters of John. So that is something that, back in the day, they probably wouldn't have thought of that. But now that you got like computers and people with doctorates and kind of like breaking down the nuances, it's very much in line with the other letters, okay? Also, whoever wrote it, assuming it's John, and we believe it's John, but this person was at the crucifixion as well. So when we get to the part of the crucifixion, he's actually speaking of events in real time of his experience there. He also was an apostle, because he says that he was the disciple that Jesus loved. Okay, Lena, I noticed that you pointed out there that he was the disciple that Jesus loved. So he was part of the 12 that was at the Last Supper. So that we understand that there. He was part of the 3. Okay, the 3, Peter, James, John. Okay, so whoever it was part of the 3 as well, because it says Peter motioned to him. We're going to get to that point later on. Peter motioned to him, talking about that disciple. Now, just to also understand that in that culture, it was not, when you're writing a story, you would kind of write yourself into the story as a third person. So it was not uncommon for that. So it's not only that John was like, oh, I'm so humble, even though he says Jesus, he's the one that Jesus loved. But this idea that he was kind of following that sort of writing pattern at the time. But he says that Peter motioned to him, so part of the three. So he's not Peter. And also James by this point has died. So process of elimination, we have John, basically is where it is. Okay. So there you are. Okay. So now who did John write this to? Okay. We in Chilliwack and Ontario and beyond, we have the benefit of this now, but who did he write to at the time? So he wrote it most likely to Ephesian Gentiles. Shocker. Okay. I'm not sure everyone in the room, I knew that already. Probably not, because I knew it, I guess, to pass my, get my degree, but I read it and I was doing research. I was like, oh, cool. That's interesting. Dealing with the Romans this now, and now he's right. Now we have the Ephesians getting a story, the story of Jesus, trying to help them understand it, right? Because why? Because he explains the Jewish feasts. Okay. If it was in Jerusalem, they wouldn't need to. Matthew doesn't really deep dive into a lot of things like that because they already understand it. He explains Jewish customs. He also talks about the geographic locations. They're shared. Okay, they're shared there. The Jewish names are translated into Hellenistic Greek. Okay, so he translates it there. So that's another reason to understand this. And also, there are those that believe that when we get to chapter 12, verse 20, which is about a gazillion weeks away, but when we get there, Snoop Dogg, great having you. A little late this morning, but that's great. You know what? I love having you with us. So, but this idea of that he brings this Greeks, he bringing in the Greeks into this story here. There would be those that believe that this is John trying to tie this understanding of Jesus being the Messiah for all. Okay? So when was this written? This was not written in, if Jesus passed away, and it passed away. Jesus died, rose again in about 33, 34 AD, because maybe around 30, anywhere in that range, because depending on where you want to land with the scale of when Jesus was born, I think we kind of screwed up on the calendar a bit there. But anyway, so wherever that is. So these disciples thought Jesus was coming back right away. So they didn't really feel they needed to do this. But as life goes on, it's like as you go along, you say, oh, maybe I should write down some of my memoirs and leave it for my kids and my grandkids so that they know stories about me. I have a file that I look at every May of my dad. It's interesting, Mom's on that. But Dad wrote down some stories, and so I read that every May because he was born in May. And so this sort of idea, John's now coming to the end of his life, and he's like, I got to keep this story going. So they say it's probably around 80 to somewhere between 80 and 95 AD that John wrote this, which is in line with the other letters that are the epistles of John there. Where did he write this? There's really no evidence on this, but the early church fathers say that he was in Ephesus when he wrote it. So it's kind of like the closest account we can get to it. Plus, there's some of that understanding, like, okay, this is why it was written to the Ephesian Jews, okay? And the other thing that they've, and this is what's so cool about God, like, the early church fathers says it was in Ephesus, okay, cool. But now that we're have so much archaeology and study and all that, we see that the church in Ephesus seemed to have the earliest writings of John. So when we see the gospel according to John, because remember, they don't have a Bible, they don't have all 66 books, they wouldn't even have one. They may have a letter, or they may have a copy of a letter, or just oral tradition. So the earliest writings, the references to the historical account of Jesus from John, okay, is brought up earliest in Ephesus. So it's kind of cool that it still marries together. Okay. Really, really cool. Okay. So what is the book of John? Good question. The book of John is an historical account of Jesus, but primarily to those that did not have religious access to him. Okay. So This is the reason why I say that John is probably one of the best books to start off with. There are the gospel, you can see, hearing, oh, I gave them and said, read the book of John. Why? Because it's written for those that don't understand Jesus, for those that don't have context on who he is. We say that Jesus is the answer. Well, we have to show the questions. And we have to show it in the context. And that's why I find that John is a fantastic book to deep dive into. Okay, so 3 reasons why I believe John was written. Okay, yes, to those that needed access to Jesus from an irreligious point of view. They didn't have a Jewish context. But I want to say that John, in the book, there's 3 main themes that we're going to find in the book of John. Okay, the first thing is found in John chapter 20, verses 30 and to 32, okay? And we're going to read this a little bit later on too in John chapter 1 here. But it says this, that Jesus performed many other signs in the presence of his disciples that are not written in this book. But these are written, catch this, so that A, you may believe that Jesus is the Messiah, the Son of God, and that by believing, B, what do I have 1 and 2? Anyways, B, you may have life in his name. Okay, so the first big reason there is that you may believe and that you may have life in his name. Okay, so let's break that down. The second thing here is that when you look at the first half, okay, of the book of John, and I hope you're still sticking with me on this stuff. I know we're not even at verse 1 yet, but anyways, let's just stick with me here. In the first half, you've got the 7 signs. You're going to find 7 big boom, 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 boom signs of Jesus's ministry, okay? And it's there so that the people might believe, or, catch this, to have faith in him. Catch that word, faith, okay? To have faith in Jesus. The second half that's mentioned here in chapter 20, it is like from 13 to 21, is that you may have life in his name. Okay, so it's the quantity and the quality of life, that eternal, relational aspect of our faith. So it is having A, faith, but B, fullness, faith and fullness. So like for Romans, we called it grace and truth. Or oh my goodness, it was just 2 weeks ago. I can't even remember what it was. But I'm gonna have to go back there because I almost think that's not right. But it's but this idea here that what are the 2 main themes that we're gonna be looking at in the book of John? It's going to be this. It's going to be faith and fullness. Okay, so you can't really have the fullness of Christ if you don't have faith in him. And if you have faith in him, then you should, okay, well, I think we're going to read this later on. It says, life to the fullest, have life more abundantly. That abundant living should come in there too. So that's really the 2 themes that we're going to look at for this idea of John, is that putting our faith in Christ as well as living in the fullness of Christ, okay? And then the third reason, the third big thing, and then we're going to get into chapter 1 today, okay? But the third thing is that it's to reveal who Jesus really is. Not Jesus was, who Jesus really is, okay? One of the cool things, I'm just going to re-up my caffeine, and some of you may be saying, you need to bring it down, but one of the things that's really cool is that I love the book of John because John is rogue. John writes it down. As I mentioned another time, Mark probably was the first of what's called the synoptic gospels, Matthew, Mark, Luke. They're called synoptic because there's this synergy. There's a lot of cross-referencing. And so Matthew sounds a lot like Mark and Luke. Luke, not so much, but Luke uses some text from it. Why? But Luke was a historian. Luke was looking into the text. Luke was commissioned to find out and verify catch that, verify the veracity of the storyline. They were not the TMZ of the day. Luke was not just trying, here's the rumor mill. No, he was the fact checker. Okay. So, of course, then he would go to Mark's writings and then, talk to certain people or whatever. So, Matthew, Mark, and Luke, they all kind of interchange, but Mark probably, they believe John Mark was the one who wrote the first text, and Matthew's like, oh yeah, let me add this to it, and then Luke's like, okay, this is what was said, and yeah, we verified it, and it's true, and that's why, anyways. But let's jump into John. John just kind of just vomits out this storyline because he doesn't want it to get lost, and so he's just kind of going with this. The cool thing though is that in the other Gospels, Matthew, Mark, and Luke, it starts about the storyline of Jesus's birth on earth, moving towards heaven. Okay. Whereas here in John is going to switch it. I don't know, maybe he had Mark's writing at some point. I don't know. But like he's flipping the tables and he says, actually, this is heaven to earth. This is heaven to earth. Not about, the incarnation of Christ, but this is about the descension of the Christ and the coming of the Messiah from heaven, which I think is also cool. Also, John was writing this to dispel the rumors. The rumors were already out there. There's rumors about you. There's rumors about me. Like, there's always going to be rumors because people like to talk smack. Well, you think they're going to talk about Jesus and say, well, I heard this. Well, I heard that, right? Of course, right away, it's going to come out of the gate. So John is trying to dispel that stuff. And I don't know how I'm going to get to where I want to be. Anyways, but we're about to jump into John. But this idea of the rumors, there's rumors that Jesus was the Spirit of God in a regular man, just all of a sudden at the baptism, and we're going to read about that in a moment, hopefully. There are those that say, well, he wasn't really a man. It was just like this man figure. And there's like Gnosticism, and you're getting all these whole other beliefs that are out there about that. Okay. But that's why you see him writing words like logos, which is a Greek word about being the word, not just logos in the sense of like, oh, a word. No, it's the word, okay? And the Messiah, the Son of God, God, man, that's why he's using these phrases. Ding! Okay, here we go. We're going into chapter 1 of John. Okay, so let's get in this. In the beginning, here we go. In the beginning was the Word, and the Word was with God, and the Word was God. What a great shout out, okay? This was not just some sort of cool thing. This was intentional. This was to bring it right back to the beginning. Genesis 1, okay? In the beginning, God created the heavens and the earth. In the beginning was the Word. So when all of that took place, the Word already existed. He was just right out of the gate saying, no, this wasn't something that started after the baptism. He always was, okay? Always there. Verse 2, he was with God in the beginning already. He was already there. He was with God in the beginning. All things were created through him, and apart from him, not one thing was created that has been created. Okay, I just want to say this. Let me just do it once, at least once this week. This is going to be hard on me because there's so many times that I have to skip over something. So I don't know. I may have to like put in some another session of just like, here's some little tidbits that I didn't get at. But anyways, I want to be able to be conscious of time. So anyways, let's move on here. Verse 4 says this, in him was life, and that life was the light of men. Again, okay. That light shines in the darkness, and yet the darkness did not overcome it. Let me give you a little physics lesson. Okay. Light will always overpower darkness. Darkness can't overpower light because it as soon as light comes in, darkness is actually the absence of light. So it becomes a vacuum of light. And then light, as soon as it is operated, boom, whether it's a particle or a wave, which is both, it just all of a sudden takes up that space. Okay, so the darkness did not overcome it. Verse 6, there was a man sent from God whose name was John. Do me a favor. Enter your name there. Okay? There was a man or woman sent from God whose name was Craig, John. He's pointing out at the very beginning just not the irrelevance of John the Baptist. It's going to actually be important. But the fact that it was just who was being obedient. Okay. Do you see how this is going to be hard? Okay. He came as a witness to testify. Witness and testify about the light. That's all you need to do. Okay. So that all might believe through him. He was not the light, okay, be clear, but he came to testify about the light. The true light that gives light to everyone was coming into the world. Remember, he wrote this from far away. He's saying to everyone that this is the one that the Jews were waiting for and that you didn't know that you needed. And so this is kind of where he's coming from. Okay, verse 10 says this. He was in the world, and the world was created through him. And yet the world did not recognize him. The world did not know what they had. Even though he was in the world, he didn't from afar off. No. He was immersed in it. Well, okay, we're going to get into that. He was in the world, and the world was created through him, and yet the world did not recognize him. He came to his own, and his own people did not receive him. Not about recognition. This is about reception. Okay? So it's one thing to see something, but are you going to receive it? So not only did he not be recognized, but he was not received. But to all who did receive him, he gave them, I love this, especially coming out of Romans, the right to be children of God, to those who believe in his name. It's a very simple requirement, okay? No big hoops. But they have the right, remember through Romans, that sin made us orphans. Okay, sin made us orphans, but salvation grafted us in adoption back to God. Okay, so that's what's being said here, is that we are now to be children of God, who were born not of natural descent or of the will of the flesh, okay, or of the will of man, but of God. I mean, just there, come back to this. So not of natural descent. So obviously we are not, even though we're children of God, we're not divine. And though there are some religions that believe that, we're not divine, but we have, through Christ, we have access into the divine, and our soul, which is eternal, is spiritual, just like the divine of Christ, and God is spiritual as well. So we're not a natural descent, or of the will of the flesh. That's important. Or the will of man. And so here's what I want to get at. So the will of the flesh being effort. Effort alone is not going to do it. The will of man, entitlement, that's not going to do it. And we live in an age where everybody's entitled to everything. And isn't that nice? I believe I should have that. Okay, well, do it just because you believe it. So here you're not the will of the flesh, effort, or entitlement. Neither of them are enough. Okay, it is through Jesus. That's what he's getting at. Who cares how much you try? Who cares how much you assume? It's not going to matter. You need Christ. Okay, verse 14. The word became flesh and dwelt among us. It tabernacled, literally. It tented, it encamped, it occupied, it came in. It's like when it's like you're in a new area, boom, and you just put your stake down. Here I am. This is my tent. This is my area. That's what happened. Jesus did that. He encamped with us. We, catch this, first person, we observed his glory, the glory as the one and only Son from the Father, full of grace, okay, and truth. Acts of grace and truth. You need both to be effective as a Christian. See, I just like, that would be like a 10-minute conversation through Romans. But here we go, that you need both. You need grace and truth. He was full of it. We want Christ in our lives. So grace and truth both need to be there in our lives. Verse 15 says this. John testified concerning him. John the Baptist. Remember, this is John the Baptist. John, in the author, will never refer to himself in this that way. John testified concerning him and exclaimed, "This is the one of whom I said, catch this is important, the one coming after me ranks ahead of me because he existed before me. He lied. John the Baptist lied. No, he didn't. But he lied because if you look at Luke chapter 1, verses 26 to 37, Elizabeth, who's the mother of John the Baptist, is in her 6th month of pregnancy. And then there's Mary, who has just got pregnant. So who was born first? John the Baptist was born before Jesus. So really, why would John the Baptist say that Jesus existed before me? His birthday is later than mine. Unless John, author, is referring to what we need to understand and get at, that Jesus pre-existed all of it, all of us, all of everything, because everything was created through him, okay, by him there as well. So the one coming after me ranks after me because he existed before me. Indeed, we have all received grace upon grace. Literally, we have received grace because of grace. I love that. We've received grace because of grace, okay, from his fullness. For the law was given through Moses, but grace and truth came through Jesus Christ. No one has ever seen God, the one and only Son, of who is himself God and is at the Father's side. He, God, has revealed him. Okay, probably gonna. Can I pull it off? Let me try and pull it off. Okay, I'm gonna keep going. But let me just say that about that. That grace upon grace. That we have grace because we've been given grace. Then we build on that. Okay, verse 19 says this. This was John's testimony when the Jews from Jerusalem sent priests and Levites to ask him, "Who are you?" The reason why I'm saying this is because I'm really going to deep dive into this more next week. He didn't deny it, okay, but confessed, "I am not the Messiah." He cuts to the chase. Guys, you think I'm the guy? I'm not the Messiah. What then? Are you Elijah? I am not, he said. Are you the prophet? No, he answered. Who are you then? They asked. We need to give an answer to those who sent us. What can you tell us about yourself? And he says this. He said, I am a voice of one crying out in the wilderness. Make straight the way of the Lord, just as Isaiah the prophet said. Let me end with this. 7 bells. He said, I am a voice of one crying out in the wilderness. I am a voice. He didn't say I'm the voice. I am a voice. I said earlier, there was a person sent from God. His name was John, Craig, Linda, Mom, Lena. Put your name in here. Are you a voice out in your wilderness where no one else is? Are you a voice saying to those around you, make straight the way for the Lord? Why did they ask if specifically he was the Messiah or the Elijah or the prophet? Next week, we're going to talk about that. Until then, go in peace, and then may God be with you. And hopefully you're going to enjoy this journey as much as me. God bless you guys. Bye.